Welcome to This Week in Teams. Our October updates issue? What is it?
What happened in October? It's this month in Teams.
This month.
Welcome to This Month in Teams, where This Week in Teams does a monthly review of everything that was announced last month. That's a mouthful.
Yeah. So the community, the Teams people, whoever they are, put out a blog post for the Teams October updates. So that's what we're going to kind of recap.
As usual, we're going to cover not everything, but most of the things that are relevant to you as an end user, and some of the things that we think are pretty cool. If you want to see the whole list, check the link in the YouTube description or on our blog. Otherwise, Craig, why don't we jump into it?
Hey, if they're clicking on something, they could subscribe to our channel, right? Because we could use some subscribers.
I'm always happy to have a new subscriber, or an existing subscriber, or just any subscriber. Now we sound desperate.
We are, but we never mentioned clicking on it in any of our other episodes, so I thought we'd get it in early.
All right. Let's get started. So, Craig and I were talking this morning, and I realized that if I focus on government, I probably should actually focus on government. And so while we're going to cover everything, we're going to start today's episode by talking about the updates for Microsoft Teams in government, rather than the updates in commercial and making you wait until the end when we go, oh yeah, that too. So there's actually a lot this month.
The edition of this month and This Week in Teams.
What?
So we're going to call it the government-friendly edition.
Sure. So there's actually a lot going on in the government space this month. Very excited to see all of the new releases across GCC, GCC-High, and the DoD. Craig, if you look at this list, was there anything that was really exciting for you?
I guess that they're actually getting stuff right. It's every time I talk to a government customer, they're like, yeah, it's all well and good, but when are we getting it? So presenter mode in desktop for window sharing is pretty cool. So just that ability to present PowerPoints in Teams and look like you're in it, or you can do a couple different ways, right? You can do it as the newscaster ways, I believe, or a side window. So that I thought was pretty cool. I know a lot of the group or big meeting people like the together mode in commercial, so that we can have everybody all look like we're in a classroom or something like that and take a big picture at the end.
Right. So I was skeptical of this when it came out. I do think it's kind of neat, but it really made me curious if people were actually using it. Do any of your customers utilize it?
I do not know. Utilize it. I know if you're teaching a class, like if you're sometimes to have that kind of discussion, I've seen that used. So not in a regular meeting, but if we're having, monthly types of updates where there's a lot of people, it's become trendy to put it on together mode, take the picture of everybody there, and then use that as a cover photo kind of when you post the notes.
Right.
So I've seen that a lot. Is the biggest use I've seen that.
Okay. Well, I'm curious if any of our government customers are excited about this, or frankly, if any of our none of you are customers, our government listeners, or frankly, if any of our commercial listeners utilize this on a regular basis. This and the presenter mode that Craig was talking about are both available GCC, GCC-High, and DoD this month. So that's really exciting.
So I had mentioned something like that. I can't remember if it was to you or just on a call in general. And some of the stuff that we just talked about, it's big in the EDU space. So
sure.
That is where it becomes important, because they like to be able to see the interactions with all the students. So that was why, the 47 or the 49 7x7 window was really important to the EDU space. And for community people or community calls, right? So It's nice to see the government's getting that. Whether or not they want to take advantage of it, they still can feel like it's there for them, right?
It does make me wonder if, so my wife, have talked about it before. She's an English teacher. And while they're in person now, it makes me wonder if towards the end of last school year, if they were using Together Mode at all. I'm definitely curious. Oh, well, anyway.
Go ask her. Guest, it's the on-the-spot guest talk. No, just kidding.
The other thing that was really interesting to me is, again, in GCC, GCC-High, and DoD across the board, is the present from PowerPoint to Teams. I've only used this once since it came out on the commercial side, but it's actually really cool. You just need to make sure that if you're doing it and you don't want people to click ahead in your slides, that you're turning off the capability for people to look at the slides ahead of time. But I do like that it allows you to present. If you've ever shared a PowerPoint deck on a Teams meeting, generally what you do is you share you open the presentation, and then you share the window that the presentation is in, which means if you have one screen, you don't see your Teams meeting, you don't see your notes that are potentially in the thing, you don't see what your next slide is. If you have three screens like I do, it's easier, but I actually really like, because it pushes the whole thing with notes view or presenter view into the Teams meeting, while everyone else is seeing the production side of it. You're seeing the notes side plus the chat plus the preview of the meeting itself. I think it's great. I love that they've done that integration.
Yeah, and now I've heard too, and I should know this for a fact, but I just heard this yesterday, and I can check that actually takes less streaming, so you don't have to, if you don't have your camera on.
Okay.
It can take less bandwidth to the users. So
neat.
Yeah. So
okay.
If they're having problems with bandwidth, then that could be, for our users, that can be helpful.
Yep. Now this is a feature I was excited about purely because, if I'm reading this correctly, it's coming out in both the commercial. It either came out in commercial last month or it's coming out in commercial this month alongside government, which is the new assignment experience for the modal window and breakout rooms. Was that last month or this month? I can't remember.
I believe it was last month commercial. And
okay,
now it's coming government too.
So we're only 30 days off, which is pretty spectacular for the government side. And if you're using breakout rooms, this is a big deal, because it makes it just easier to do that. On the commercial side this month, they are releasing breakout room pre-meeting creation. So for people who were invited to the meeting, you can actually preset your breakout rooms, so you don't have to stumble during your presentation. That's a pretty cool thing.
That's huge too.
I imagine that's going to come quickly to the government side, considering how quickly the modal window came. But yeah. Okay. What else, Craig?
Attendee reports are actually pretty cool. So that was, something that we got a lot of requests for. Hey, how do I see who actually attended the meeting after the meeting's over? I don't want to go back and look through the notes or the side chat and have to figure it out. So to be able to download who was in it, that can be helpful if you have large meetings and you just want to make sure who was there and check that out. So that's coming to GCC. Team webinar capabilities are GCC, nice. Yep. So that kind of function, to be able to have the webinar right in Teams without having to do a full Teams live event is pretty cool.
Yeah, the Teams webinar, and just for everyone's awareness, the Teams webinar experience, I think it goes up to 1,000 people, and then it kicks it over to a live event, right?
There you go. So and then guest access. You want to talk about guest access?
Yeah, this was interesting. So the way you read the article, it talks about guest access support on mobile for DoD, and then it talks about guest access support on mobile for GCC-High, and then it says guest access now. Teams now supports guest access between tenants inside the GCC-High cloud. So it's like a little bit backwards in the way they wrote it.
Yes.
But the long story short is there is now same cloud guest access for GCC-High, which means those of you in the DIB, the Defense Industrial Base, or organizations like law enforcement who are in GCC-High, you now have GCC-High to GCC-High guest access, which is really good. Same thing on the DoD side. You now have DoD to DoD access. So something that we heard a lot at the conference this week. I was at the TechNet Cyber Conference for DISA. Something we heard a lot is they're really looking forward to being able to share guests from, for example, Army to Air Force.
Right.
And so the guest access capability is really great for allowing that. Bringing people in like this means no additional license cost, and it means you can control what they can have access to and report on. So very good. This has been in commercial forever. There's going to be a big learning curve on this, because it's going to mean you have to understand, when I bring a guest in, what can they see? How do I control what they see? Stuff like that. Reach out to me on the Twitter right here, because I talk about this all the time, but some really good stuff there. On the twits, right there.
On the Twitter. There. Yeah, too bad nobody wrote a blog post about anything about guest access or anything like that either, Jay. Maybe you could put a link to your blog post on that.
That's a great reminder for when we write the blog here. We'll link to that. Thank you.
And then the other thing I saw was the enhanced sharing experience in Teams, which I didn't really think was so, out of touch with commercial and government. I would have thought that would have already been out, but the ability to, when you go to share content, a little bit better experience on doing that. So allows you to share your screen, or to share the actual program you're looking, whether that be PowerPoint, Excel, makes that a little bit easier. And then I think it suggests some of the things that you've been working on recently as being able to do that. So
yep.
A little bit more options than what previously was there, and a little bit better organized to make sense to the user.
I'll do one more that I thought was really interesting, is the prompt. When you set a meeting with large number of people, it auto prompts you now, or it will auto prompt you as soon as it rolls out in your tenant, but I think this means it is. It'll auto prompt you across all three, GCC, GCC-High, and DoD, to set your meeting options, which I think is really smart. It might be annoying for someone who creates lots of meetings, but especially if you're just setting a meeting and it's not something you do all the time, that reminder to check what are the settings of this meeting, from who can share, who are presenters, to what's the experience for guests, et cetera, coming into a meeting. I think that's really smart.
I will tell you, the one that I was on was a huge meeting recently, internal, and somebody left the announce when somebody comes in. Oh God, it was like ping, 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 and
boop, this person has entered the meeting.
And there were people who dropped just because they got tired of it until they figured out how to change the settings. So
yeah. So as you can see, there was a lot on the government side. There's something about live transcripts for unscheduled meetings, which I can't believe that wasn't there already. And Teams device management in the DoD. Definitely click through and check it out. But this is the most government drops in 1 month that I've seen. And while some of them seem small, I think it's a lot of improvement for user experience. And like I said, I'm really excited to see how close that breakout meeting experience change was to what we saw in commercial. They're getting better at getting these more in sync with commercial. It's really exciting.
Yeah, it was interesting, because when I was reading through the blog, I'm like, oh, Jay's going to be excited. And then you're like, so I talk to you and you're like, can we move this up to be the first thing? And I'm like, yes, Jay, we can.
Yeah.
So what actually, let's just bounce out of there in a meeting and webinars. The all new whiteboard experience in Teams looks like it's going to be pretty cool. So previously, whiteboard is a pretty cool product in and of itself, but if you tried to use it in Teams, it was lackluster. Like, you just had a few options with it. And
right.
It really was, disappointing when you knew what whiteboard could do. So they're bringing that into Teams, and a lot more ability, a lot more pens, a lot more organization. That looked really cool. So
yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that's really cool. The whiteboard experience, and I know I was just prepping for the M365 government community call last week, and our government facilitator, who's always on the call, Jeremy Wood was complaining that it's not in GCC-High or in GCC yet. But the new whiteboard experience is actually very impressive. And I don't think enough people have adopted the idea of whiteboarding during a meeting. And frankly, it's because it's clunky to whiteboard with a mouse. But if you have a touch screen, it's just a small version of a whiteboard. So it's actually it's a cool capability. I hope that starts to take more or gain more traction.
Well, I think so. Even if I was good at it, I would be as a user hesitant to use it, right? Because there's always things that you think can go wrong in a meeting, especially if you're a presenter. If you got it, like, you have to know who you're talking to, I think, to be able to do that. So, like, it has to be for me, a tight team. It wouldn't be something I would either have to have practiced a lot on it before I would want to do it to people I didn't know, like,
right.
or weren't. Because let's face it, sometimes people can be brutal on calls, and when presentations aren't going right, or your PowerPoint slide deck gets stuck.
Sure.
Sometimes they're like, what are you doing? Can't you do it faster? I'm like, patience. We've all been there. Not every meeting runs as well as we would like. So.
That's fair. Unfortunately, not everybody's as professional as you'd like them to be in a professional setting. I will say that I've now seen in 2 of our webinars at AvePoint, we've used a whiteboard as part of the webinar. Cool. I did it I didn't do it. In a webinar I ran last year, our chief records officer did it to showcase what records management looks like and how to modernize it. And it was a really cool experience. Rather than looking at a slide, you're literally looking at her drawing this out. So in the right scenarios, I think it's got a lot of value. We mentioned live transcripts and unscheduled meetings up above. I didn't realize that was just coming out in commercial too. So there you go. And why are my words not working this morning? A time drop between commercial and the government clouds. Very exciting.
Yeah, for unscheduled meetings and channel options too. So
yep.
So that's pretty cool. I didn't realize that they weren't there, but I can understand why that. Well, just live transcripts actually just dropped like last month, right? Or that's only been a couple months.
The live transcripts dropped automatically starting last month, I think.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yep. Which is great. If you hit record on a meeting, it automatically starts your transcript, which is awesome, except for a meeting that I did sometime last month for Buzzkill. We hit record and the transcript didn't start, and I was very confused as to why. But anyway, that's a conversation for another day, I suppose.
And then, as we talked, breakout room. So that's more improvements there, being able to auto assign, do your room creation before the meeting, because that is very helpful, especially if you're doing a large one, a large meeting or a large training exercise webinar, and you want people to break out. To be able to pre-assign those makes it a lot easier to be prepared for it. And then a little bit more managing capabilities are coming out. So giving the management for breakout rooms to the presenters, not just the person who organized it. So you can actually have people help you do it. So before when you were doing the meeting, if you had to organize it, you had to do all that. Now a little bit more delegation, similar to, I'm going to go off the live meetings if you played with that, but kind of similar to how other people could do.
No, talking.
Yeah, I'm talking. Similar to how other people could do the question and answer. So.
Sorry.
Team effort for these. You can make up some pretty cool meetings.
Yeah. No, I needed to close the window. Someone's outside with a leaf blower in the rain. I don't understand that at all.
It's fall. There's leaves.
Must clean the leaves. It's raining.
My brother
I
texted
don't
me
care.
yesterday. Who are these people that like fall? It's been rainy and windy for 4 days and leaves everywhere. So.
I love the fall. The fall is awesome. But the rain has been terrible this week. One thing, we talked about presenter mode above in the government section. I say above. Previously, we talked about presenter mode in the government side. This is really cool. The fact that there's presenter mode with the standout in PowerPoint Live.
Yes.
So the standout feature allows you to interject your face on your presentation. Really neat feature. I think it's a power. Teams has had it for a little while now, but they're actually saying if you're doing, that was if you were sharing your screen. Now, if you're doing PowerPoint Live, it's also there in the commercial side. A really nice enhancement. That's it. That's my whole story.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's still, I think, I don't know if I've seen it much because
it's a change in how people do things. So where I've seen it, I think it's been really great. But you're right. It is not something everyone is doing because you have to design your PowerPoint expecting it, and you also have to be comfortable as a presenter. So I've seen it more in the education realm, and I don't mean in like high schools and colleges, but like people who run regular webinars or education for businesses. They're doing it because it allows them to showcase themselves, which is their brand, while presenting. It also makes it a little bit more engaging. But for a sales meeting, I'm not seeing it. Right.
Yeah, you have to be really, again, those people that are comfortable showing themselves on video. Because I know when I do it, a lot of times I'm like, I turn it off because I don't want to see myself talking. So,
all right. So that's meetings and webinars, some really good stuff there. There's some features on the calling side and on devices, but we don't generally talk about those, and so we're not going to today. Nothing mind-blowing to me, so we'll just keep going. What's going on in chat and collaboration, Craig?
Chats and collab. Oh, Visio. So for the regular user, Visio, being able to view Visio files.
You got it. You okay?
Which I don't know how many people use Visio files. If you're not, you do it. I don't use it a lot. I've just never been good at it. I know for like the software engineering type of planning and that kind of stuff.
That's exactly where.
Those guys use it a lot, and I wish I was better at it. But now I just use the PowerPoint things, the shapes and objects, and try to do that. But the ability to not necessarily have to have a license for it to be able to view and comment on files is huge for the people that use those.
It's all about the preview. Being able to click, just like you can click on a Word document in Microsoft Teams. Now you can click on a Visio document. It's going to bring up the viewer. You can't edit, but you can comment and share and print, which means you can get the baseline things. And now you only have to worry about licensing for the person who's really doing the heavy workload, which I appreciate that Microsoft is lowering the bar to entry to utilize these capabilities. Nothing frustrated me more when, as a new project manager at my last job, someone sent me an MPP file, a Microsoft project file, and I didn't have a license for project yet, so I couldn't even view the content. So
yes, I totally agree with you on that. And then,
what?
Oh, were you going to comment further on that?
No, I was not.
I was going to move to the next one and kind of preface it. Much as we hear government going, hey, how come I don't get all the features? Occasionally we hear that from the EDU side. So 2 new chat collaboration features that I believe have been out in commercial for a little bit have come there. So the chat supervision, where you can actually delete messages from people who put things in chat, is pretty cool. So, that kind of goes, you have a class, people, you don't always know who's going to be attending. It could be a student. Somebody puts inappropriate comments in it, and you didn't used to have a way to do that. So now you can. Now you can get rid of those inappropriate comments or things that make no sense or those kind of things. And the other one is the suggested reply, which I don't know is a huge deal, but I do find it sometimes when you're quick, it will suggest three replies based on what somebody says. And usually there are things like, I'll get right on that, sounds good to me, or I can't take care of that right now. Something like that. So.
Yeah, I actually just used thank you yesterday. It was a little more excited than I expected. There's an exclamation point, but I sent it anyway. What I thought was interesting about the suggested replies and chats for EDU is it's not enabled for students. It's only enabled for admins and teachers.
Yes.
Which actually I appreciate that because nothing irks me more than the idea of a lazy student being annoying to teachers. So anyway.
I did find it interesting because I felt when I used it the other day, I felt like I just clicked on it and I'm like, well, that's kind of lazy. So even if it says thank you right there, I usually type thank you and put a little smiley face on it.
That's fair. That's fair. All right. So on the management side, I was all set to skip straight through management. And Craig pointed out there's 3 features of specific interest. So Craig, since these were your interest, why don't you take the lead?
So the first one we're going to talk about is exporting teams list from the admin center. So if you've been in the admin center and you want to look at your list of teams, there's a list of teams and you have to kind of scroll through it to see what your teams are doing, right? But there never was a good way to get that out or filter it unless I wanted to run a PowerShell script. So now they've added the ability to just click on a button and download those listed teams in a CSV so that you could actually do something with that list, which isn't bad if your list of teams is like 10 or 15 people, right? To be able to just use the UI for that. But some of my clients have hundreds of thousands of teams and the UI is not fun for that. So
yeah, so it's quaint. It's first of all, this should have been in the tool since
day one,
if not the beginning, the second day, right? This is something that AvePoint's been doing for years, not just with teams, but with teams and groups and SharePoint site collections and Yammer communities, because enterprises need to know, they need to be able to inventory this stuff. In fact, we have one customer where their requirement is, I need to know not just all of the teams, groups, site collections, etc., but which department or division do they belong to, because I'm going to do a chargeback. This particular customer, they have over 300 organizations in their tenant, and they do a chargeback on quota. So they need to see in this department what teams and SharePoint site collections exist and how much of their quota are they using, so I can up their bill next month when they go over. So it's a nice start, but yeah, it's almost too little too late. Like, thanks, guys.
Yeah, well, anybody who really needed to do that created a PowerShell script to do it anyways, if they didn't have a third-party tool.
If they didn't have AvePoint, that's right.
Just saying. No, sometimes it seems like that some of the development that gets created, they don't envision a customer that has millions of, or not millions, but hundreds or thousands of specific things like teams or groups or users or that kind of thing. So it's like, if you want to build for scalability, we've got to have these kind of things in it. Yep. The other thing that was interesting to me was the ability to buy things. So for our users to be able to purchase apps or and then be invoiced right to the admin center, or to be able to be invoiced to them so that they can buy a third-party app that they might want to use in their work and just do it without having to go through permissions to do that. While it is great and it will allow users to even use the platform even more, I just see a lot of IT people going, no, we're going to turn that feature off. So, because they don't want to be responsible for it.
Yep, totally agreed. So it'll be interesting to see how that works. I was talking to our
why I was interested in it, because I know that it's just going to be a feature a lot of customers are going to turn off.
Yep.
And it's strictly going to be because Jay is going to buy an app and then he's going to ask me how it works.
and then I'm going to try and expense it even more. Like, then there's going to be that problem of 100,000 employees all expensing a $3 a month app that, like, we don't even want in our tenant. So yes.
Yeah.
Listen, I get
there's probably already functionality there. So.
Well, but if you look at the industry, I actually understand where they're coming from. Like, if you look at tools like WeChat and what they're doing overseas, it's not so much an American thing, but like, they've had capabilities to order pizza and all sorts of things for years and years. And Microsoft Teams is slowly trying to work its way out of just being an enterprise tool and expanding into so from commercial to government to education to students to home. So I get the vision. but I don't think it's going to be utilized right now. I just don't think it's a thing for now.
Yeah, no, but we definitely want to get there. And then and again, it's also going to the, Microsoft wants Teams to be the platform that you can do everything in, and no real reason to leave that. And for a user, that's a great experience. I don't have to leave the platform and open this browser window to go here and open this browser window to go there. If I can just do it all from within, or this app to do this, if I can access all of that in one platform, just makes my life easier.
Yep. All right, so we don't have much left. There was one other thing for education. It's kind of funny that the other things weren't here like we did for government. Not your fault. It's the way it's written in the blog. The data reports after a Teams meeting class. So if a teacher used something like a poll, you can get in your summary report the list of the summary of how that was used and shared with the teacher. So again, more things to try and make the teacher experience easier.
Yes.
God knows they need it to be easier. Like just the stuff teachers are dealing with these days. Got to simplify as much as possible. Not because they can't handle the workload, but because the workload is so insane. And on the front line, I figured we'll end with your section on Power Platform. But on the frontline workers, the thing that interested me the most on the frontline workers was the fact that they're enabling walkie-talkie mode on. First of all, I didn't know Zebra mobile devices were a thing. So they're enabling walkie-talkie mode on Zebra mobile devices.
Do you know those are black and white, red all over?
And second of all, like, I had no idea push-to-talk was still a thing. And I guess it makes sense. Like, if you're in a frontline worker scenario, you probably have walkie-talkies or whatever. So being able to pull this into Teams, okay, like, not my space, not something I play in, not something I think about. It just really, like, to see push-to-talk in this blog really surprised me.
Yeah, no, and I don't really have a whole lot to add to that because I don't do a whole lot with the frontline workers, but I've seen more and more stuff coming out for them.
Yep. All right, Craig, take us home. The Power Platform and custom development. We got some new things in there that I assume will be of interest to you.
Well, we already talked about purchasing the Teams app through the Teams store, so that's going in there. That kind of falls into that department. Again, it's going to be an interesting collision of when IT says we're going to allow it or we're not. Some organizations definitely will, and some organizations will cut it off at the knees, so to speak. Yep. So before anybody gets to talk to it, the other thing is team template updates and maintenance. So just there's some Teams templates that have been coming out, like projects or events, that you can spin up a team and choose an event and kind of get a scaffolding in Teams of how you might want to manage those projects or those teams. So it's just some more templates and some more features that will enhance those templates and make them better.
Okay.
And then there was talking about scheduling in Microsoft booking apps, but I have not used the booking app. Have you used that at all?
I have utilized someone else's booking app a bunch. So going back to Jeremy Wood, he does something called the Geek Within, and he actually uses the bookings, I think the bookings app or Calendarly, one of those, in order to schedule, in order to allow people to self-schedule on his calendar. Really neat feature. I think Shari Oswald does it also. So I've seen it utilized. The issue I had when I went to set it up myself was the only place I have a single calendar for everything is on my phone, because all of my calendars are imported into my phone through the accounts, and I use a single view to look at them all. I don't actually have them all merged anywhere. And so the bookings app is great if I only use office time, and then I still have to confirm that what's coming through doesn't affect a personal appointment. So I need to look more into the bookings app to see if you can use it for shared for multiple calendars, or if you can only use it with your office.com account. That's my experience.
Cool. Then I think that pretty much wraps up everything that I think was important.
Craig's like, I don't care about
you. You may disagree with me.
We've gone too far. All right. No, it was a really good month, though. Like I said, I was really excited to see, bringing us right back to the beginning of the conversation, how much came out for government across all three clouds versus just the GCC. And the fact that there was two simultaneous things with release and commercial this month, and one thing catching up to last month. Like, we're seeing more and more things come at that pace, so I'm very excited about that. Yeah, no, that's it for me, man.
Yeah, so next month should be really kind of exciting, more exciting, because we didn't mention this at the beginning, and I really wanted to. So if you're still here for this, Microsoft Ignite is next week.
Yes.
So that's the big conference. If you do a search on MS Ignite, you can find it. You can register. It's free, but there's going to be a lot of that's the conference that Microsoft makes a lot of the announcements for what's coming up. And I know that there's going to be some cool announcements for Teams, Power Platform, the some Viva announcements will be in there, something for Ignite, not Ignite, Insights, and some more management capabilities on what managers can actually see and do will be announced there. Not necessarily that everything will be released on that date, but there's a lot of Viva stuff that will be dropping in November that they've been waiting for Ignite to drop it. So, but the announcements of what we're working on and what's going to be coming out throughout the course of the next fiscal year, I believe.
So if you are a commercial user and you want to see what's coming out from Ignite, check out Matt Wade and Sean Bugler's the MS Refresh show, because they will probably talk about it, or come back here next month to the November release, and we'll probably talk about some of those things in the this month in Teams review. But also, if you're a government user, check out I'll put a link in the blog and the YouTube description. Check out the M365 government community call that I run every month. This month, the November episode on the 9th, we're doing a special on Ignite, and recognizing that there aren't generally a lot of government-focused announcements. We're actually going to do a special where we talk about how do you find out what's coming for government. So we're going to review all of the community resources, how to utilize the roadmap, how do you talk to your NDA resources, like your customer engineers or your account managers, etc. And so I'm really excited about that episode. Why are you?
Sounds like an awesome. Sounds like an awesome episode. What I thought you were going to say is realizing that they're not going to be much. That should be about a 10 or 15 minute call.
Not where I was going with it, but touche, sir. Touche.
Yes.
I was like, Craig's laughing at this. This is a really good concept.
It is. It's awesome. I was waiting for you to say we're going to talk about there's not a lot of announcements that come out, typically. So we're going to talk about that in about 5 to 15 minutes. There might be 2 bullet points on the slide for lucky 3. That whole conversation was going in my head. So.
Oh, Lord. All right. Well, this has been October's This Month in Teams on the This Week in Teams video podcast. We know you liked this episode of This Week in Teams because you're still listening. So if you want to hear more like this, make sure you click the subscribe button, notifications, and go to onthespot.tech for more from This Week in Teams and our sibling podcasts.